Hey there everyone, it's me, Old Movie Master. So today I'm going to be reacting to an interview that was done with Steven Seagal. I think this was back in 2011. I'm not sure, 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. Because this is before he had the goatee. He started using, styling the goatee in 2013 when he did a movie called Force of Execution. It's crazy that I know these things because, yes, I am a Steven Seagal fan. I like all his movies, even the bad ones. I enjoy them for how bad they are. Yes, at one point in time, this guy made good movies like Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and Under Siege. And I do enjoy Under Siege 2 more than the first one as unintentional comedy. But outside of his movies, I also love his interviews because this guy is such an arrogant a-hole. He believes all of his lies. He believes things like being an ex-CIA operative. He believes that he was very good friends with Bruce Lee and that he knew Brandon. His son, Kentaro Seagal, were the same age, supposedly, as Brandon Lee, which is not true because Brandon Lee was born in 1965 and Kentaro Seagal was born 10 years after. So if he had Kentaro Seagal in 1965, that means that Steven Seagal, who was born in 1952, would have been 13 years old? It makes no sense. But he loves telling these lies, and he believes them. So watching his interviews, they're both cringe, but they're hilarious. And sometimes I stay up late at night looking for these interviews because they make me laugh, and they make my day. But this one is the longest interview he's ever given that I know of. With the exception of an interview that he did recently for Scott Adkins' channel. And God bless Scott Adkins. He's an amazing martial artist, and he had the patience of gold to interview Seagal. And so did the gentleman of The Voice who interviewed Seagal here. I haven't seen this in many, many years. I've seen clips of it over the years, but I haven't seen it in its entirety. So we're going to be watching it, and I'll be pausing it and giving you commentary on it. I don't know if we're going to watch the whole thing, but we'll watch parts here and there that I find hilarious. So sit back, get some popcorn. We're going to watch The Voice versus Steven Seagal. Here we go.
Steven Seagal, thanks for joining me on The Voice versus. It's an absolute pleasure. You began practicing Aikido, you shifted to Japan. Can you tell me how you first became involved in Aikido? Because it does intrigue me that, Aikido developed by the Japanese by a much shorter man, Morihei Ueshiba, O-sensei, and you yourself about 6'5", larger individual. How did it come to be Aikido that was your chosen art?
Well, actually, I started studying karate at a very young age. I sort of lied about my age and got a job washing dishes at a restaurant. I think it was called the Wagon Wheel or something like that. And
let me pause here. I've heard this story before. He said the story once in the Jay Leno interview that he was washing dishes so much and they observed him that he was so fast washing the dishes that, they had never seen anybody like that. So he must have been someone that can be trained in the arts. So I want to hear his version because he likes to change versions of stories a lot.
There was a cook there because back then in America you didn't really have dojos around. You didn't have people teaching kung fu and Korean arts and Chinese and Japanese.
I'm sorry, I laugh at how he pronounces kung fu, karate. Like he pretends like he's a Japanese guy. This guy was born in Lansing, Michigan, and he is not Japanese. He also is not a Native American. He's not Italian. He's not Russian. He likes to pretend to be other cultures, but we'll get to that later.
They just didn't have it. They were all sort of underground or quietly teaching. And one of the cooks there was a guy called Sakamoto Sensei, and he was a Shotokan guy and an Okinawan Shorin guy. And he saw that when I was washing the dishes and moving around that I moved very fast and loved the martial arts. And one of the other guys in the kitchen, I didn't know what he was a Mexican guy who claimed to be a boxer, and he was one of these kind of controversial guys that loved to talk about how great boxing was and how great he was. And anyway, Sakamoto Sensei decided to take me under his wing teach me. I had asked him over and over again if he would, and then I ended up learning from him karate, the basics. It was mostly Okinawan. And then I studied from him for many years, and then finally found someone who could teach me Aikido. I was very interested in the Aikido. As you know, I had met Demura Sensei and some of the people from Shitoryu. Never really studied with them much, became very good friends. And we did some demonstrating together, and we demonstrated karate at this place that they had, which was a theme park, like a Japanese theme park in Orange County somewhere. I think it was called the Deer Park. And so Demura Sensei and I and a bunch of the guys, who are not all Shitoryu, by the way, we all demonstrated karate there. And about that time I found a master in Aikido named Isaka Kyoshi, who became kind of the most important martial arts master of my life. And I devoted all my time to him, became his closest disciple, and I don't know if I was his closest disciple, but he was my closest teacher, and certainly I loved him most and devoted everything I had to him. And he really was the most important martial arts teacher of my life.
Of course, the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, O-Sensei, passed away in 1969. Did you ever meet O-Sensei? And if you did you develop a relationship with him? Did you train with him at all?
No, by the time O-Sensei was getting old, you know.
I'm going to pause there because he's told this story several times. Sometimes he says he was trained by him. Other times he says he took some classes. I want to hear what he says here. I think he says that he didn't get to know him. So he's inconsistent. That's why you can tell he lies a lot.
I was quite young. I was 18, something like that. I had gotten to, my father was
No. In 1969, Seagal was 16 years old. So he could have not met the founder of Aikido. Because Seagal says several times he likes to change it around based on whatever story he's telling, but the truth is he went to Japan at 18. So by the time he went there, that was what, 1970 something? He would have been dead. Yeah, he died in 1969. So no, he never met him.
in Japan, having to do with some military stuff, and he allowed me to come with him. I was able to meet one of my closest friends, Isoyama Sensei, and go to Ibaraki when O-Sensei was alive in Tokyo, and got to see him, got to hear him. I wouldn't say that I got to study with him or get thrown by him or anything else. I really, in that way, didn't know him.
Okay.
And then soon after that, he became ill and wasn't teaching much, and soon after that, he passed away. But I did make very...
So at least here he says that he didn't get to learn anything from him. But I don't think he met him. The years don't add up. So I'm going to go with the story that no, he never met him.
Very, very close friends with the guys that I thought were his closest students, and I felt that the mystical things, the thing that I found the most interesting about those times was, O-Sensei wasn't talking about put your left foot here and your right arm here and flip the guy this way and punch him that way. He was really talking about mysticism, and he was a kind of a priest in this place called Omoto-kyo, and he was the student of Deguchi Onisaburo Sensei and Deguchi Naohi. Deguchi Naohi was his teacher, and she was still alive, and I went there to study from her, which I did do, and I did learn.
Also, I don't speak Japanese, so the thing with Seagal is that he loves to pretend he knows languages. Like he probably does know a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Russian, but just words. And he likes to like pronounce them like in Spanish. I've seen an interview where he'll talk and say "Sí, yo sé español," like, and it's all BS. He doesn't know Spanish. It's just like in Machete. Like he'll say like "¿Qué traes, carnal?" or what's the other word that he says in Spanish? Ándale puñeta. But he doesn't really know what he's saying. So my question to you guys is, does Seagal really speak Japanese? Like, listen to the words he's saying. Is he pronouncing them correctly? Like, I'm sure he probably does know a little bit of the language because he grew up in Japan. Well, he went there when he was 18 and he stayed there for several years studying Aikido. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit into where he starts talking about Above the Law, which was the first movie he did. And I find it fascinating that out of all the action stars, he's the only one to break out of nowhere. He had never done a movie before Above the Law. The only thing he had ever done was he was a stunt coordinator for Sean Connery, and he broke his wrist doing a demonstration in Aikido. So he just came into the scene with Above the Law. So I want to hear his story about the movie. I remember I think he tells a story about being presented several scripts and that he was like, none of these are good. I think we can do better. And he came up with the story of Above the Law. Again, classic arrogant Seagal.
Now, moving on to your move into Hollywood. I mean, going from martial arts instructor to Hollywood actor virtually overnight. You came out of nowhere in 1988 with Above the Law, whereas
1985, 86.
You were doing some choreography and some martial arts training with the likes of Sean Connery, correct? During the mid-80s. Your first role, though, is a major feature role, and you didn't start with smaller roles like so many actors did. And there's so many stories that float around as to how you got involved in Hollywood. One is that Mike Ovitz was a former student of yours, and he took you to Warner Brothers. You did an Aikido demonstration, and Warner Brothers was blown away, and boom, Steven Seagal became a movie star. Is that true? And if not, how did it happen?
I hate to admit it, that is true.
Okay.
That's a true story.
You still remember the day? You still remember the demonstration?
I remember everything about it, yeah.
Were you introduced a new style of martial arts that no one had ever seen on the silver screen. Right. People used to kick punches of, your Bruce Lees and your Chuck Norrises and your Van Dammes, etc. But here was Aikido. Was there ever any trepidation from you or the producers, the guys at Warner Brothers, that this stuff might not work on screen? There were no flashy kicks and jumping round kicks and flashy stuff. It was mostly joint locks and holds and throws.
What most people don't know is that they probably did have some kind of, how do you say, shinpai means, maybe they were a little concerned about that.
Okay. How do you say, dude, you know English? Somehow, I think like a Japanese man, I don't know this word in English. Jesus. Okay, so he mentions, the story, I hate to admit it, but yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's continue. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah. And so they did ask me to do a screen test, and I did. And they said, man, this guy has got so much, going on. He's got the charisma, he's got the look, he's got the action. We feel confident after that. And so they handed me 2 or 3 scripts, and they said, make any of these you want. I read them. I came to America as a writer, and I didn't like any of them. I said, I think we can do better than this. And they said, well, there's a writer's strike coming up, so maybe if you want to write something. And I said, yeah, I want to write something. And they said, well, there's a writer's strike coming up, and the timing is going to be difficult if you don't write it quickly. Can we assign some folks to help you? I said, sure. And they assigned me Stephen Pressfield and Ronnie Shusett. And together we all wrote Above the Law, yeah.
Again, he's just showing that, okay, those 3 scripts that were handed to me by other writers, those are trash. I came to this country as a writer. Not only am I a philosopher, an Aikido master, but I'm also a writer. And eventually I'm going to become a musician, a cop, an ex-CIA operative. This guy can do it all. So, let's continue.
In interviews you've said that Above the Law was part autobiographical in segments.
Well, I'm not going to get into that, but I will say that I believe it was based on a true story which had to do with the Iran-Contra, conspiracy, which really never came out.
Okay, and he said in other interviews that he witnessed some of these things, that, with the CIA and all Like, I like Above the Law. I don't think it's his best movie. My favorites are Mark for Death and Hard to Kill, and I do love the Under Siege movies. But Above the Law, if you watch it, it's also unnecessarily convoluted. And that's the classic plot of a Seagal movie. Things don't make sense. There's a lot of like backstabbing and conspiracies and all these governments doing crazy things behind, and only Seagal is the one that can stop it. That's the classic plot of a Seagal movie. So whenever you see a movie that says produced by Steven Seagal or written by Steven Seagal, get ready for a convoluted mess where only Seagal can solve it. And no one can defeat him.
Your first 5 films are considered classics of the genre. Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Out for Justice, Under Siege. Classics,
yeah.
I was a huge fan back in the day. When I first saw Above the Law, I must have been 13 years old, and I was so into it, I think I whispered everything for a month afterwards just to imitate your voice. Out of all the characters you played, Nico Toscani, Mason Storm, John Hatcher, Gino Felino, and Casey Ryback, which of those characters was the most fun to play, most memorable?
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question. The face he makes.
I think maybe, Above the Law was the most fun for me.
Yeah, because it's your most convoluted movie. At least from the
Under
good ones.
Siege. I have to ask the question, 1 or 2? Which one did you prefer? I actually preferred Under Siege 2 to Under Siege 1.
Me too.
I think I like Under Siege 1.
Yeah?
Yeah, because that's the one that made $100 million.
I like them both.
Yeah, I like them both too. They're both classics. Oh, so many fight scenes in so many films that you've done. My favourite one, I suppose, the Out for Justice cue ball fight was
That's
fantastic.
my favourite also.
It's your favourite as well?
Yeah, that's my
What made that one your favourite?
Well, I improvise, in Special Forces, we say something like...
Okay, Seagal has never been in the Special Forces. He doesn't hold any military rank. But he loves saying that, yeah, in the Special Forces, we trained and we know these things. Like, come on, man.
There's this phrase that is common amongst operators. We say, adapt and overcome. And coming up with the idea of putting that cue ball inside a rag and using it against all those people was a really good idea that really works.
It did.
I can tell you.
I don't remember who was it that said this, but I think it was one of his bodyguards or something like that said, Seagal, if you left him in the middle of an island, even if you gave him a compass, he wouldn't know how to operate one. I heard that once. And I also heard from an ex-CIA operative who actually did work for the CIA. He's retired now. His name is Herbert F. Saunders. I don't know if he passed away, but at the time, in the 90s, he was in his 60s, and he came to Seagal as a consultant, security consultant. And Seagal at the time was paranoid because he thought the mob was after him, and he wanted to know if he could pretty much bribe him to whack someone. And the CIA guy was like, what the hell? And he said in an interview for Spy Magazine, back in, I think in 2003, he said, okay, this guy cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. He really believes he's the characters in the movies he plays. So, let's continue.
And that will hurt somebody very badly. And so...
No. Of course.
I like that. And then, Danny Inosanto is a dear friend of mine, still is a dear friend of mine. He, as you know, was one of Bruce Lee's teachers. Brilliant knife fighter, great at Eskrima, and all that stuff. And him and I had done a lot of practice together and working together. And I tried to learn from him, and I think he tried to learn from me. And so being able to work with him that day and fight him.
Why is he looking over there?
I was going to say, Danny Inosanto, at one stage, Bruce Lee's #1 student. You also...
and teacher.
And teacher. Friends with James Coburn as well, who was one of Bruce Lee's students. Indeed.
That's how I met Bruce Lee, was through James Coburn.
Okay, he may have known James Coburn. I think he did, because James Coburn was the one who helped him appear on the Merv Griffin show in the mid-'80s. But he loves telling the story that he knew and met Bruce Lee, which is a lie. Because Bruce Lee passed away in, 1973? So Seagal at the time was living in Japan. And he was owning and managing a dojo, which is also not true. He did manage a dojo that belonged to his father-in-law. He didn't own that dojo. He loves telling the story that he was the first American that opened a dojo and operated a dojo, and that there was people that didn't like him and they wanted to duel him to the death. All of that's BS. It is true that he managed it and he did teach it, and no one's discrediting him from the art. When he was young, he was fast. He knows the art of Aikido. But Aikido, for the most part, it's like a dance. There's certain things in the art that do translate to the real world, but for the most part, it's using someone else's, strength to your own advantage. But what I'm getting at is he's about to tell you the story about knowing Bruce Lee, and I think he tells in this story how he also knew Brandon Lee, and that his son, Kentaro Seagal, who was his oldest son, knew Brandon Lee, and they were the same age. That's a lie.
I wasn't around Bruce much. He
Okay, you weren't around him much.
was the kind of guy who kind of would badmouth most, a lot of the other martial artists.
You're lying.
Martial arts, in a kind of a sarcastic way, fun way, which I understood. For some reason, he never had anything bad to say about me, and I was quite interested.
Of course not, because in your fantasy, in your mind, you're the protagonist. No one can make fun of you. Everyone loves Seagal in his mind. So, of course, Bruce Lee will never badmouth him, but he will badmouth others. Okay, sure.
Had to say about me, and I was quite interested in Aikido, and he was very nice to me. He knew that I grew up in Asia and that I had a son that was half just exactly.
No, he wasn't!
As Brandon. And when I met Brandon, he had lighter hair and said, "This is my little Caucasian boy."
No, they're not the same age. Bro, again, Brandon Lee was born in 1965. Steven Seagal was 13 at that time. He was 13. He was living in Michigan. He had... This is just... Oh my God. It's let me continue.
I thought Bruce was a really great guy, a really cool guy. And I thought James Coburn was a great guy too. And I'm really sorry they're all gone. And when Brandon was killed like that, they
Again, he's looking over there.
A few minutes after it happened, and it was in Carolina somewhere. They called me in the middle of the night. They said, "We think that he's dead, but the guy shot a blank gun at him. How could he be dead? He's dying. He's severely hurt, maybe dead." And I said, "You will find a projectile in him. You'll find a bullet in him." And they said, "That can't be. You're crazy." And I said, "You will find a bullet in him." And they called me in the morning. They said, "You're amazing." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "There was a bullet."
Oh my God, I had forgotten about this part. Yes. Oh God. Steven Seagal, the forensic investigator, knew that there was a bullet inside Brandon Lee when he died. So, if you're not familiar, Brandon Lee died on the set of The Crow. And from what I understand of what happened was that it was just negligence. They had used a gun and there was a bullet stuck inside. And they were using blanks. They created their own blanks. And of course, the powder that was left inside the bullet was enough to push the projectile that was still in the barrel. And the way that projectile got inside the barrel, I forget, I think it was used for a close-up shot, and again there was enough powder to push it, and then the next blank that came in gave enough force to push it in, and it actually pushed out as a bullet and shot him. But this was stuff that was investigated, and it took months to come to a conclusion as to how they killed Brandon Lee, and it was ruled as an accident by negligence. And here, freaking Steven Seagal knew it, before it happened. He's a know-it-all. You're gonna find a bullet inside it. You're amazing, Steven. We love you, Steven. Jesus, what an arrogant.
And I can go through the whole story.
Yeah,
What
you can
really
go.
happened, which most people don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The long and the short is when Brandon passed like that, I didn't sleep for 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
It just reminded me too much of certain things, and the loss of both of them was terrible for me.
Another great actor, one of my favourites, and I know he's one of your favourites as well, Jackie Chan. Man who sent me flowers for my 21st birthday, coincidentally. And by the way, you and I share the same birthday, April 10. You were one of the people, and it's a little known fact, who helped Jackie Chan break into America and introduce him to American audiences. Can you tell me about your relationship with Jackie and how that started?
I mean, I've known Jackie for, Jesus, maybe 40 years.
Wow.
I've known him from way back in the early days. I'm not very close with him anymore. I don't really go to Hong Kong or China much anymore. Him, Sammo Hung, a lot of the old, some of this is really maybe not quite fit for, saying out loud on.
More like, I don't know what lie I can make up right now at the spot. That's what it feels like, Steven. You don't know what lie to make up. I'm not saying that he doesn't know Jackie Chan, but Jackie Chan came to the States not because of Steven. It came because of hard work. Jackie Chan, I remember from the movies that I've seen, he tried not once, not twice, but 3 times breaking into the American market. And it wasn't until 1998 with Rush Hour that Jackie Chan became a household name. Before that, he did a movie called The Protector, which I really like. Jackie Chan's not a fan of the movie, but that was a movie that at the time he didn't like doing because it wasn't his style, it wasn't his branding. And even before that, he did something called A Burly Brawl, which was a project that I believe was intended originally for Bruce Lee. And Jackie Chan, again, they didn't know how to use him. So, and all of these projects were American movies, and none of them worked. It wasn't until Rush Hour. And then, of course, now everyone loves Jackie Chan, but Steven loves taking credit for everything, whether it's Anderson Silva winning because of that kick, or even in movies, like if he's the villain, he has to be the one orchestrating everything. He has to be the one, even if he's the villain, he has to be the center of attention. So, and again here, he'll find a way to make himself the center of attention.
On film, but there's an interesting group of folks that, are kind of some in the shadows and some in the light. And I was friends with all these guys for a long time. Haven't seen Jackie for a long time now, but at one time I thought we were kind of good friends,
In an interview, you also said once you'd made many great movies, which you have, and said you'd made many, or some, bad movies. Is there one particular film you look back on and you sort of cringe and go, geez, did I really do that?
Unfortunately, there's many. I think, I was looking at an actor the other day on screen, and I was going, holy shit. Can you say shit on this interview?
You can say whatever you like.
Yeah. I said, holy shit, did this guy actually do this? Not only was the movie that bad, but the acting was that bad. And it's a pretty famous actor. And I just said, hey, man, happens to all of us. We all, because we are, I don't want to say victims, but we are subject to the financiers and what they want us to do, and the studios and what they want us to do, and we don't control the show. So I made a lot of...
That's probably one of the few times that Seagal will say that he's made a bad movie. But again, he doesn't say which movie is terrible, because secretly he loves all of the movies that he's been in. I'm pretty sure. And on top of that, notice how he talks about someone else making a bad movie, and that he's not in control of what they're doing in the movies. Well, here's the thing: a lot of the movies that he's been in that are terrible were written by him and produced by him. And one of the worst one that he's done recently, which was Attrition, I think he wrote, and he says is one of the best movies he's done in the past 20 years. So, Steven, I know this interview was before Attrition, but he's done a lot of movies that he's written, and he wants to blame others. Again, he's never at fault.
So I made a lot of terrible movies and a few good ones.
If all your movies were lost forever in some freak fire and all the show reels were gone, but one survived for you to be able to show your grandkids one day, which one movie of yours would you hope survived?
It'd probably be on deadly ground because of the speech in the end, which, you know, is exactly what Al Gore did, you know, 18 years later. Then you got an Academy Award nomination. I was a little ahead of my time. And I understand they cut quite a bit of that speech out. It was originally much longer, and it really just covered the entire gamut of what's happening with.
Yeah, he loves telling the story that he was ahead of his time, and that he should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize for on Deadly Ground instead of Al Gore. On Deadly Ground is a hilarious movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's one of my guilty pleasures, where Seagal pretends to be Native American. He doesn't outright say he's Native American, but he's dressed like a Native American, and he defends the people of the land, and, you know, he wants to stop pollution. This is during a period of time where Seagal wanted to be an environmentalist. Like, he goes through different phases. You know, there's a phase where he's a Buddhist monk. There's a phase where he will wear a do-rag and pretend to be very urban, and sometimes he'll start playing the blues, and like he's like a chameleon. Like he can be anybody, you know.
The planet and the environment, but I don't really know what's left. I'd like to rent it just to see, but I think, you know, for mankind, that's probably the most important work I've done, in my opinion. And then, you know, Fire Down Below was also another important environmental movie. So, but I think On Deadly Ground, the speech in the end with the slides.
By the way, Fire Down Below is the exact same movie as On Deadly Ground. You change a few things here and there, it's the exact same movie. The Patriot, which came out, I think, a year afterwards, pretty much the same movie.
Very important.
Who's the most legitimate
Oh,
Hollywood tough guy?
Here's the part. This part, I love this part, because this is where he starts trash talking every other action star from the 90s.
In your opinion, you accept it, of course.
When you say tough guy, do you mean martial artist or just tough guy?
I mean, Steven, for real. If he was on the street and there was a situation, you wanted this Hollywood guy by your side because he could defend himself.
The face he's making!
It's that
What a
hard to believe.
douchebag!
Can you think of one?
Michael J. White.
Can I laugh in your face?
Really?
Yes.
Thoughts on Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Can I laugh in your face?
Chuck Norris?
I mean, Chuck is in his
Oh
mid-70s,
my
but
God.
76 years old, okay? 75, 76 years old.
Interesting.
So I don't know, I've heard that he's not, you know. So, I mean, I don't really want to get into, on film anyway, you know, who's a tough guy. Do I think Michael is a tough guy? No. Do I think he's a martial artist? No. Do I think Jean-Claude's a tough guy or martial artist? No.
What a... Oh my god. I want to strangle the guy. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Michael J. White. Michael J. White is a martial artist, and he makes way better movies than Seagal. I feel bad for Michael J. White because he has so much talent, and he still appears in a lot of direct-to-video movies, and I enjoy all of them. I saw his most recent one, which is called Welcome to Sudden Death, which is basically a remake of the original Sudden Death with Van Damme. Very predictable, but Michael J. White always gives 120% in everything he does. I enjoy even movies that he's done for the Asylum, like Android Cop, and of course Black Dynamite. So, and the nerve of this guy to say that he is not a martial artist. He is a martial artist. He trains way more than he does. Way more. Just look at Michael J. White's physique. He's super in shape. He trains probably hours a day, 7 days a week. Seagal, like, just look at Seagal. Like, the guy is huge, and not in a good way. Then he says, who's the other actor? Chuck Norris. Yeah, Chuck Norris is, 76 years old, and I've also heard he's not, I don't want to get on it on film. Like, come on now. Chuck Norris was a karate champion. He was and still is legit. I'm pretty sure right now, at 80-something years of age, he could beat the crap out of Seagal. Like, come on now. And who else was it that he mentioned? Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme, the guy, he can do splits, he can do the roundhouse kicks, he can still do it to this day. There's a movie that he did, Pound of Flesh, where he stops a car and he does the splits. I'm pretty sure if Seagal was in that car, he would have slapped the shit out of him. I'm sure if Seagal was around, he would have slapped the crap out of him. So, I enjoy Seagal's movies both ironically and unironically, especially his classic set of movies. No one's taken away from him that he is or was at one point a martial artist, but it's just such an unlikable quality from someone to start bad-mouthing others. It's a funny thing because Van Damme has nothing but good things to say about Seagal. There was an interview that he did in 2012, I believe, for Expendables 2, and he said, well, he just needs to lose some weight, he does have a presence on the screen, he doesn't like me because, I'm good. And it's true, he is good. I think Van Damme is, he's in his 50s? Almost 60 or something like that? And he's in amazing shape. Look at Seagal. So, I'm sorry. Let's continue.
If you were to put together your own ensemble of action stars, your own version of the Expendables, let's say, who would you choose? 3 or 4 actors to be in there with you?
I think they had many great actors in there, that are great action guys. I think this guy Jason Statham, is that
Jason
right?
Statham?
Statham,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah.
It's not Stratham, it's
I
Statham.
didn't even know his
Jason
name.
Statham is a wonderful action guy. Jet Li, fantastic action guy, who, by the way, is a real martial artist.
Yes, great wushu.
And, I'd never seen him fight, but I would imagine if you would have mentioned his name over those guys, I would have to say, okay, he's a real martial artist and probably can fight.
Dolph Lundgren, Kyokushin karateka, used to be competitive.
He's a very nice guy. Do I think he's a tough guy and a great martial artist? He's just a great guy, and
But not a martial
anyway.
artist.
So, but I'm trying to think of all the guys that were in there. I didn't get to see it, but Jet Li and Jason Statham are great.
He's still pronouncing it
Dolph
wrong.
Lundgren, Terry Crews, Randy Couture.
Randy's a real fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Of
Of course, Bruce Willis and Arnie, we know both aren't real fighters, but great actors.
They're great actors,
Mhm. And Sly Stallone.
You got all those great actors there.
Yeah.
All those great actors. Yeah.
Folks, you may be
Oh my God.
wondering at this stage of the interview why I haven't asked Steven Seagal about the rumour that he was once choked out on set by judo Jean LaBelle. Steven Seagal was adamant off camera that he did not want to give Jean LaBelle any publicity during this interview. He said he had met Jean LaBelle on set once and all they'd ever done together was stretch, and in no way, shape or form had LaBelle ever choked him out.
So that's a story that I've heard so many times, and the best person to tell the story is Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart heard the story from someone else about what happened with Steven Seagal, and I'll be talking about it in another video. But it's an alleged story, but I believe it probably happened. Knowing Seagal's ego, I'm pretty sure that this did happen because he actually was the one, according to the story, he was the one who asked, like, put me in your best chokehold and I'll get out. And Jean LaBelle held him in the chokehold and Seagal pooped himself. And it's, I love that story and I've heard it so many times. And in my mind, it probably did happen. So let's, I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I don't want to react to the whole thing. I don't want to make this video longer than it should be.
And Silva first come into contact?
Anderson sent me a card saying, teach me your lethal stuff, teach me your great stuff. And then there was a phone number of a guy called George Germatis, and I called George, and he said, yeah, man, Anderson's a big fan, he knows about,
Yeah, what's wrong with his eye? He keeps...
Would you come and teach him? And I said, let's meet and talk. And we met and talked, and I thought he's very sincere, very humble, and that it would be a good thing to do.
Keeps looking over there, keeps looking over there.
I went to House and started teaching him, yeah.
After Anderson knocked out Vitor Belfort, he said the front kick he won the fight with was taught to him by you. Gave you credit for that, which was, fantastic and sort of introduced you back into the world of mixed martial arts fans. But there were a lot of people also questioning the validity of that, of how an Aikido instructor would teach a Muay Thai guy a version of a front kick.
I mean, whoever says that doesn't know anything about my life. I mean, I spent my entire life. First of all, I started out in karate.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
So you started out doing Maigeri and karate.
Yeah, I started, you know, for many years before I even began Aikido. So, and then I went around the world studying from, you know, Kung Fu masters, Muay Thai masters, you know, and Tai Chi masters. And so I've been doing mixed
What
martial
does Tai
arts
Chi
for
have?
40 years. And so whoever says that just doesn't know anything about me.
Would you believe you're one of the original mixed martial artists, in that you're probably one of the first guys to train in so many different styles that's high profile, of course?
No, I think there are millions of other guys that were doing the same thing. We just didn't use the word mixed martial arts, but that's what we did because we wanted to study everything we could to make sure that whoever we're fighting, we are covered for the different
Why do you keep looking over there?
situations that we might be in. We would know what to do on the ground. We would know what to do with kicks, punches, elbows, grappling, joint locks, whatever. We want to know how to do it. A lot of the old wisdom and knowledge and essence is lost today in the modern world. A lot of what the old masters had and have is beyond most of your modern practitioner's comprehension, because nowadays you have stuff like UFC, for example, where people are getting in there and physically they are, you know, it's wonderful in the sense that they're physically, you know, trying to kind of understand the limits of, you know, their talent and their skill and getting in there and testing it out, and they're great athletes, and some of them are great martial artists and so forth and so on.
What the hell are you talking about?
The spiritual training that most of the old guys in the olden days used to go through in order to culminate the development of the physical self and the perfection of the spiritual self simultaneously, that's almost lost these days. And like Lyoto Machida,
Sounds like a plot of a Steven Seagal movie.
His father and I are about the same age, and we are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
We went through the same things with the same people. Him and I talk about this a lot.
Always
This
looking
is
over there.
something
Always looking
that
over there.
we really understand.
It feels like every time he's telling a
I have
lie, he
friends
looks over there to make sure. I don't know who he's looking at, but like, did I actually do that? I'm not sure.
Like his father and Isayama Sensei, and I could go down the list, who are in their 60s and their 70s, who could kill most of the guys who think they're great warriors that are in their 20s or 30s. Kill them.
Okay, so now he's saying that there's people who are in their 60s and their 70s who he likes, who can actually defeat someone in their 20s. But when it comes to Chuck Norris, nah, he's 76 years old. He's not even, you know, a real martial artist.
Instantly. It's that stuff that most people who will hear this will go, oh, come on, that's a joke. Well, amongst real martial arts masters, it's not a joke.
Exactly. I mean, I take, for example, one of my favourite martial arts masters ever, Sosei Masoyama, who invented Kyokushin karate. There's a man who passed away in later age and, you know, could still knock out people with one punch and kill with one punch. He used to kill bulls and do shuto strikes and shave the horns off bulls, and, you know, the amazing feats of power.
He was a good friend of mine.
He was?
Good friend.
Tremendous. And, you know,
Everyone's a good friend of Seagal.
In Kazakhstan, I think. I was somewhere crazy in the world. the other
Kazakhstan.
day, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. And there was a big Kyokushinkai, how do you say in English? Like
a gathering or a convention?
Well, yeah, convention.
Again, how do you say it in English? How do you say it in English? I can't think of the words because, you know, I'm a Japanese man.
All this, you know, demonstrations and fighting and competition, and all the old senpai, all the old, you know, Kyokushinkai masters were there, and they saw me come in. This was like chilling, and they, whoa, you know, he's here, and they made me come and sit with the other masters, and they introduced me as their senpai.
Wow, what a tremendous honor. Tremendous honor.
The fantasy,
You know, interviews
the
that
fantasy in this guy's head.
Is something you like had in the bank. You had in the file from many, many, many years ago. Can you elaborate a little more on the kick? And is it your own version of a Maigeri, of a teep kick?
Not. Anyway, everyone can say, oh, it's just a Maigeri. It's not just a Maigeri. What I tried to teach him and Lyoto You see, most people when they do Maigeri, they lift the leg and they kick.
Sure.
What I'm trying to teach people to do, without giving away any trade secrets, is to kick like this, so you don't see it coming. You don't lift up and kick, you kick like this. And it's the way you hold your foot. It's not like this, like a lot of people do in there. You'll see it all the time. But it's like this, so it's like a spear.
A lot of people do this to protect the toes. Is there a danger of breaking the toes?
Well, you have to lift your toes up.
Okay.
You lift your toes up and you're kicking with here.
Bro,
Okay.
So,
this guy's talking about lifting his leg up and doing it like this or like that. This guy can't even like reach to like tie his shoes. Look at that belly. I don't like making fun of fat people, people who are overweight, but this guy always make an exception. He cannot kick. There's a video where he's with Anderson Silva and he's about to teach him to kick, and he doesn't want anyone to record him, of course, because they don't want him to see that he can't actually lift his leg very high. I'm not going to watch the rest of the video. I'm done. But again, it always cracks me up. I cringe and I laugh. I am in disbelief every single time I watch one of his interviews. But the thing with Seagal is that he lives in a fantasy world where everyone loves him. He cannot be defeated. He's every single character in the movies. He's an ex-Navy SEALs. He's an ex-Marine, ex-CIA. Like that's all in his head, and he truly believes it. And I love him for it. It's a type of love where I laugh and I enjoy it. So it's a gift that gives on giving. You know, I don't want him to ever change simply for the fact that I can laugh at all of his stupidities. So again, like I'm not discrediting him as a martial artist. I'm pretty sure like he actually does know Aikido, and I'm pretty sure he does know some karate. But when he was younger, when he was in his 30s and 40s, he was actually really, really good. But anything after 2001, 2002, no, it's you're gonna tell me that he's better than Van Damme, he's better than Michael J. White. There's no way. These guys are actually still trained to this day. Like look at Dolph Lundgren. I got a chance to meet Dolph Lundgren in a convention. The guy's still in shape. He still looks great for his age. And I'm pretty sure he'll beat the crap out of Seagal with just one punch. So, and I would pay to see that. I would love to see that. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned. There's going to be a little bit more coming up.